Zaidee would have been 19 this year. I imagine that you and your wife Kim must often ask yourself what she would be doing now were she alive today.
Yeah, always. I think any parent that loses a child that young see their friends. I mean, we see Zaidee's friends all the time in Shepparton, and we watched them grow up over the last 10 years. And I think you do. You wonder to yourself, what would our daughter be doing? Whose friends will she be with? And what she'd look like? How would she react? All those sort of questions go through the minds of, I guess, any parent that loses a child so young. And we do all the time.
What sort of little girl was she, and what did she bring to your lives during the 7 years she was with you?
She was one in a box. I mean, I tell everybody, and not only because Zaidee was my daughter, but she was 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million. She was one of those little kids that wouldn't shut up. She'd just yak and yak and yak. She wouldn't stop talking from the moment she got up until the moment she went to bed. She was always in a hurry to get places. She'd never walk. She'd either skip, run, hop. She had to get there quick. She'd never sleep in, and she'd stay up late and go to bed late. She was one of those children that wanted to know everything, be part of life from the moment she got up. We can't remember in the 7 years and 22 days that she had a sore toe or sore throat or even a headache, and she never missed a day at school. She was never sick until the actual day she died. And I think Zaidee was just full of life and energy, and always trying to compete against the big brother, which was, she was 2 years younger than Jazz, her brother, but she was definitely one of a kind little girl.
Allan, one of the many letters on your website is from a child who says, "Every night when I lie in bed, I think of Zaidee's story, and almost every time it makes me cry. To think that she'd only just decided that she wanted to be an organ and tissue donor, and then months later, she sadly dies." I'm glad you made Zaidee's Rainbow, because before you came to our school, I'd never heard of it, and I've been interested about it and your family ever since. It's pretty inspiring stuff, isn't it?
Oh, it definitely is, Michael. I think when you communicate to children about another child's story, it resonates with them. They understand fully about what happened to Zaidee and the circumstances, how she died, and what she gave at the end of life. And for a child to write such a letter like that, we're very proud of what Zaidee did.
In that letter I read a few moments ago, the writer points to the bittersweet irony that you lost Zaidee just months after she decided she wanted to become an organ and tissue donor. That was a pretty monumental decision for one so young. Can you remember exactly what it was that led to that decision?
Well, I guess, Zaidee's mum, Kim, is a kindergarten teacher, and we spoke about a lot of things, and I guess Kim's education doesn't stop at the kindergarten gate. She brought a lot of things at home to teach our two children, and I guess the subject came up. We don't know how or why, but one day Zaidee turned around to Kim and said, "Mum, if anything happened to me one day, I want to donate my organs to other kids." And Kim didn't think too much of that, so she wrote it down in a little memory book about the quotations our children say when they're so young. Never to think twice, but it was one of those things that she wrote down, and less than 7 months later she actually died, and we carried out her wish and the family's wish that she'd be an organ and tissue donor.
Education has been key in the development of the foundation, hasn't it?
Unfortunately, we don't teach our children in schools. We don't talk about it at home, about one day you and I are going to die, and it's only a matter of time. And I think part of death is to say, what are you going to do after death? How are you going to be buried? Are you going to be cremated? How many people do you want at your funeral? What song do you want played? But unfortunately, we don't talk about what happens to our organs and tissues. It's always about those other things. And I think what we try to do is to influence people to say, well, have that discussion prior, because you never know. And in our situation, we'd never think that our 7-year-old girl was going to die. But we spoke about it as a family 4 years prior about organ and tissue donation. Never to think that Zaidee would be a donor at 7, or anyone in our family would be dying and donating. But as it was, we had that conversation, and we encourage other families to have that conversation just in case. It's a hypothetical.
Something that's had a very positive impact, obviously, on the number of people registering to become organ and tissue donors in a number of other countries has been the opt-out factor. How close are we in this country to seeing the introduction of a similar system?
Well, we've been speaking about the opt-out factor for a long time, and I think last year and around about September we went out fairly publicly about trying to convince the government and to change the current system to opt in to opt out. And when we look at the world leading countries, the top 5 countries in the world currently follow the opt-out system. Now, if that is a tool to assist those that are waiting for a transplant and influencing the community to donate at the end of life, then it's a tool that we should have also in the country. It doesn't cost anything. It just means that if you're willing to be a donor, that's fine. If you're not willing to be a donor, that's also fine. But tell us that you don't wish to be, rather than you having to make a commitment that you wish to be. So we've got a greater pool of people nationally that have the ability to be an organ and tissue donor at the end of life than we currently do at the moment.
What are the principal objections, as far as you know?
Oh, I think the old story is, oh well, they won't ask, they'll just take. Well, that's not the case. All the countries around the world that have opt-out still have family permission request at the end of life, same as opt-in and opt-out. But with the opt-out, it just means that a greater pool would have 16 million Australians that have the ability in the opt-out system. At the moment, it's opt-in. We have less than 6 million people that are currently registered in Australia to be a donor. But there again, you've got to wait for those 6 million people to register and then to die. And it's not happening.
Well, as tragic as Zaidee's death was, she obviously created a lasting legacy, didn't she?
It did, Michael. Zaidee gifted the sight to 2 4-year-old children by her corneas. She gifted both her kidneys to a middle-aged mum who was on dialysis for 6 years and close to death. She donated her liver to an 8-year-old girl who's now living life to the max. She donated parts of her heart to 3 others. 2 we know as a newborn baby who had a heart valve or needed a heart valve, and that newborn needed open heart surgery. She donated a heart patch to an infant, which is a child under the age of 12 months, and 1 other. And so 7 people benefited from the gifts that Zaidee gave at the end of life. So her legacy lives on far and wide now.
How can people viewing this video, Allan, assist the Zaidee Rainbow Foundation?
I think, Michael, the greatest assistance is to have that conversation at home with your family, with your mother, your father, your daughter, your son, to understand what their wishes would be and to think, what if? What if we were in a situation as Zaidee was at the end of life? Would you be an organ and tissue donor? And it's a simple yes, or it's a simple no. But better have that conversation at home, around the kitchen table, than at the ICU, at the hospital, where it's dark, it's dingy, it's cold. You don't want to be put in that situation at the time of death. Better have that conversation prior, as we did as a family.